Hey guys, what's going on? This is Athava here, back with another episode on the channel, and today we are going to see how to use passport authentication with Next.js. So everything is tricky with the Next API routes and server-side rendering, but in this video I'm going to show you how to do everything from MongoDB connection to using passport, and it's going to be a bit different from the Node Express version, so make sure you stick till the end and you will understand everything. So let's go ahead and create a new Next app for now. So we'll go ahead and say npx create next app, and I'll call it passport auth. I'll hit enter and this should start creating. Now in this tutorial we are going to use Google Authentication as an example. So let's go ahead to our Google Cloud Console. Here's the Google Cloud Console. Now here we need to go to the navigation. Here we go to API and services and we click on credentials. Now you can just click create credentials on the top and you have to choose OAuth client ID. This is the one we used for authentication purposes, and in application type we will choose web application. We will just leave the name as it is for now. And in authorized JavaScript origins, because we are using Next.js, we know that the request will be sent from localhost 3000 for now. So let's go ahead and do that. HTTP. If you are pushing this to production, you might need to change these URLs. Localhost 3000. And the authorized redirect URIs, I'll say HTTP localhost 3000 /API/ Google/callback. We will make this route when we are actually making the app, so you don't need to worry about it right now, but we are just providing the URL right here. So I'll go ahead and create this. Let's wait for it. Now it says auth client created. Now we have our client ID and client secret. Now we need both of them, and use your own client ID and client secret because I am going to disable this client once this video is done. So I'm going to copy the client ID. I'll go back to our we need to open the Visual Studio Code, right? So we'll go ahead and say cd passport auth, and I'll say code dot. Now this should open up Visual Studio Code for us. I'll make it full screen. Now I'll make a new file here. I'll call it .env.local so that we can store all the environment variables. And the first environment variable we need is Google client ID. It is the one we just copied, so I'll just paste this here. So this is the client ID, and the next one we need is the Google client secret, and this is the one just below that. So this is the secret. We copy this and we just store this here. And we are not using next public because remember that this environment variable should not be exposed to public. So we are not using next public prefix here. So I just saved the file. Now we will just start the server. Before we start the server, we will do two more things. First of all, we need our MongoDB URI. So let's go ahead and set up our MongoDB database. So once you have set up your Atlas or whichever provider you are using for MongoDB, you can just go ahead and for now, for this video I am using Atlas. So you can just go ahead and click connect, and you press on connect your application, and now here you have the database URL. I'll just copy this. I'll go back to our code. I'll make a new environment variable. I'll say MongoDB URI, and I'll paste this in. Now remember, you need to change this password here. I am not changing this password in this video. I will do that when I'm not recording because that password is kind of sensitive. So you get the idea. You need to edit this password, and here instead of my first database, I'll say testauth. We will call the database name as testauth, and since we are calling this testauth, we need to also make it here. So let's go ahead and do it. We will go to browse collections. Now we will also create a new database. I'll call it testauth, and the first collection name is users because we are going to store users in this database. So I'll just click create. Now this should do its work. Now you have testauth here, and if you go back here, you have testauth here. You just need to replace the password. Now we need one more environment variable, which is the JWT secret, because we are going to use JSON web tokens for our authentication purposes. So we will have the basic user ID stored in the token, and we will verify the token each time some user sends a request. So to encrypt that token, or basically to verify the signature of that token, we need a secret. So let's also create that secret. So JWT secret, you can do this anything. I'll just call it a very long secret. You can just have it anything. So I'll quickly change the password and I'll be back, and we will install some packages. Now let's go ahead and install some packages we need. So in Next.js we have both backend and frontend, so we don't have to worry about which package is for frontend and which package is for backend. We just install all of these together. So we can do npm install, and the packages are, we need, first of all we need mongoose for database purposes, then we need passport, which is our main authentication method, then we need a strategy for passport, which is the Google strategy. So we will need passport Google auth 2, and then we need JSON web token, because we are going to deal with JSON web tokens, so we need to install the package too to make our lives easier. I'll hit enter and this should start installing everything. Okay, it was quick, it installed very quick. We will create a new folder called lib, and then here we will have a new file. I'll call it database.js, and now here we need to import mongoose first. So we will do import mongoose from mongoose. So basically when you are using Node.js and Express in a separate backend, you don't need to create a new function here, but since we are using serverless functions in Next.js, we need to connect every time someone hits an API route, so we need to create a function here. So let's do that right now. So we'll say const connect, and this should be a function which does mongoose.connect, and here first we need to pass in the MongoDB URI. And if there is no model, we can just create it. So let's do that right here. So user is equal to mongoose.model. We will name it users, and then we can just pass in the user schema here. Perfect. Now we will just go ahead and export default user. Perfect. Now we have the model ready. Now we can go ahead and set up a passport file. So let's go ahead in the lib folder. We will just create a new file. We will call it passport.js. Now we will do import passport from passport, and we will also get the Google auth strategy. So let's do that, import, and we will go ahead and open the curly brackets for now, and we will say from passport Google auth 2. Now we need the strategy out of it, so we'll say strategy, and we need to name it as Google strategy so it's easier to read. So we'll say Google strategy. Perfect. Now we can use both of these. Now let's go ahead and start working on this. So basically, first of all, we need to go ahead and create a new authentication method. So how do we do that in passport? So we will just say passport dot use, and we will name this method something. So we will say Google, and then we have to pass in the new strategy. So I'll say new Google strategy, and then we have to pass in the few details. So basically you can find all of these things in the documentation of this package. It's very easy to deal with all of these. So first of all we'll pass in the first of all we will pass in the client ID. So let's do that. Client ID is process.env.google client id. Is it what we saved in our environment file? So now let's go ahead and see client secret. We will say process.env.google client secret, and then we will have a callback URL which will say http localhost 3000 /API /Google /callback. So this should match what we set in our Google Cloud dashboard. So it should exactly match that. And now we will have a new callback function. So this should be asynchronous function because we will be using databases, and we will get 4 things here. First, we will get the access token from Google. Then we will get refresh token, although we don't need both of these. And we will then get profile, and then we will have a function called done, which will pass control back to our express function. So let's do that right now. So what this function will do, first of all, it should be a try catch because we are using async await. Now here we will do console.error, and we'll print out the error, and then we will do done because there is an error. We will pass in the error in the first parameter. There is no user, so we will say false, and in options we will pass in a message which says internal server error. Now let's go ahead, and in the try block we will now the first thing we need to do is check if the user exists in our database or not. So if there is no user existing, we will create a new user in our database. So let's do that. So we'll say const object is equal to await user dot find one, and we need to find by email because that's unique. So we'll say email profile dot email because once you get the profile we can access the email. Now we will say if there is no user or no records found, we need to create a new user, and if there is any record, so we will have else. We will say user exists, sign in. We'll just sign in, and now we can go ahead and create a new user. So how do we do that? We'll just say const new user is equal to new user, and now here we can just pass in things according to a schema. So we'll say email should be our profile dot email, then we will have name profile dot display name, and then we will have access token here. Perfect. Now we'll go ahead and save this user so that we can generate a unique ID in our MongoDB database. So we'll say new user dot save. Now once we do this, we will get an unique ID to set to this thing, so we can add it to our token. So we'll create a new token now. Const token is equal to jwt.sign. So to access jwt, first we need to import jwt. So let's do that. Import jwt from JSON web token. Now we can do await jwt dot sign. Then we need to pass in the data first. So our data is id, the id of user, so which is new user dot id, and basically this id is generated by MongoDB, so we don't need to worry about that. And then we will also tell when this token was created, and we will just say date dot now dot to string. So basically this will store our date and the created time of the token. And now then in the second parameter we need to pass in the jwt secret we created earlier. So we'll say process.env.jwt secret. Go ahead and save this, and now we will push this token in the database. So we will do new user dot tokens dot push, and because this is an array we can push this token here, so we'll say token, and then we will save this record again. So we'll say await new user dot save. So this will update the record in the database. Perfect. Now we will just say done. Because there is no error, we will say null. There is a user here, and this is the user is new user. We will just pass in the object. Then we have the info. We will have the message here, auth successful, and then we'll just pass in the token, and then we will let the express handler handle all of these things. And then else, if the user already exists, we will then create a new token. So we'll say const token is equal to await. Basically we'll do the same thing. Let's go ahead and copy this, and let's go ahead and paste this. Instead here we won't have new user, we will have object, because before we created this and we found, and if there is a user, this object will be filled with the data. So we'll just do that. And now after we have all of these things, we will just push the token into the database. So object dot tokens dot push, and we'll pass in the token, and we will save it. So await obj dot save. Now we can again do done. There is no error. We have a user which is object, and then we have a message which says auth successful, and then we'll pass in the token. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and create the routes so that we can handle all of these things. So first of all, we will go ahead and create a new folder in API. We will call this folder Google. We will have all our Google files here. So first of all, we will create a new file called index.js. So this route will allow us to go ahead and initialize the Google authentication. So let's go ahead and first of all do import passport from passport, and then we need export default async function, and this should be request response next. And we are using next here for one reason, because we need this parameter here. And then we will say first of all try to connect to database. So await connect, and now we will import the connect function from that file which we created before. And now this, before doing any of the stuff below, this will try to connect to database, and that's what we want. And this is not that we do in Node.js and Express. This is only the thing we need to do here. And then we will go ahead and passport dot authenticate, and then we will pass in the name which we gave it, so which is Google. And then we have to pass in a few options here. So let's go ahead and pass in scope. So we need a few details of the user, right? So we'll say profile, and we also need the email of the user. You can also read more about these scopes in the Google documentation. And another thing we need is session false. We don't need to deal with all of that right now. We will just set cookies whenever we want. And now we will just pass in the request response and next here, so that passport can deal with everything else. Now we'll just save this, and it's done for now. And we also need to import this file. So basically whenever you are running this API, then this passport.authenticate function does not know what Google is. We need to import this passport.js file here. So let's do that first. So import, we will go back a few folders, then we will go to lib, and here we will select passport, and this will initialize all the methods we have in the passport.js file. Now let's go ahead and create a new callback API. So go ahead and create a new file. We'll call it callback.js, and now here we need to get all the details. So passport makes it easy for us. So let's go ahead and create a new function. So we'll say export default async function. We will have request response next, and we will have first of all do await connect, and this auto imported, so it's good. Then we will do passport dot authenticate, and we will do Google, and then we will get three things. We will get, if there is an error, we will get that error, we will get the user, and then we'll get the info. Basically whatever we pass through the done function there, we will get it here. So now here this is a callback function. Now we can do whatever we want. So first of all, we will check if there is an error or the user does not exist. Okay, so if this is the case, we will just say res.redirect, and we will redirect the user to http localhost 3000, and we will just say a auth fail. And so if you have any checkers on your front end side, you can just check for this query and you can display error accordingly, but we won't be going deep in that. We are just passing the query for just so we can do that. And then we can just create a new cookie with this, and we will set the token. So we need one more package here, which is cookies next. So we will do npm install cookies next. We'll go ahead and press enter. Now this should start installing. Now we need the set cookies function here from that package, and now here we will say that key is token, and then we need to pass in the value here. So we'll say info.token because we passed it within the done function. Now since we are running this in an API, we need to pass in the request and response here according to documentation of this thing. So after this cookie is set, we will just simply redirect the user to a dashboard. So we'll say res.redirect, we will say http localhost 3000/dashboard. This should do the work. Now all of the API backend thing is ready. We just need to work on the front end side of things now. So we will just go ahead and close the API folder. We will go to the index.js file now, and we will go ahead and remove everything here. We don't need the main, we don't need the footer. Also, let's just go to the styles. Let's go to home.module.css. We don't need any of this, and then we won't be focusing on styles here anyway. So yeah, now let's go ahead and create a new link which just simply goes to our API to authenticate with Google. So let's say ahref, we will say /API/Google, and we will say login with Google. Perfect. Now this link should be able to log in. Now we will also need to check if the user is already logged in. So how do we know if the user is logged in or not? They have we store the token in the cookies, so we should be easily able to know that user is logged in or not using the cookies, right? So let's go ahead and use server side props. So we'll say export asynchronous function. We will say get server side props, and this will have request and response, and like this we can just do what we want. So we can just have a try catch block here, and we will just return an object because Next.js needs it. We will say props, and this will be empty because we don't have anything to display right for now. Then we need to check if the cookies exist, right? So we'll say const cookie exist is equal to get cookie, and then we will pass in the key, which is we gave it a token, and then we also need to pass the request and response again because this is run on the server and not on the client side. So we need to pass these in. Perfect. So if there is any cookie existing, that means the user is logged in and we need to redirect him to a dashboard. So let's do that. So if cookie exists, then we will say return. Again, this will be an object, but this time we will redirect, and this will have a destination of dashboard. Perfect. Now we need to create the dashboard. So let's go ahead and create a new file. We'll call it dashboard.js. not in the API folder, we need in the pages folder. We will call it dashboard.js. Now we'll do RFCE, then we can just go ahead and rename this to dashboard. Same here. Perfect. Now we will also need get server side props here to get all the user details and check if the user is authenticated or not. So let's go ahead and do that. So first of all, we will say export async function get server side props, and this will again have request response, and now we will try catch. And if there is an error, first of all we will try to remove the cookies. So remove cookies, and the cookie name is token, and we need to pass in the request and response here again because this is on the server side. And in the try block, the first thing we will do is we will try to connect to database because we need to fetch all the details from database, right? So we'll just do it await connect. Now this should connect to database, then we will check the cookie. So let's do that. Const token is equal to get cookie, and here we'll have token, and we'll also need to pass request and response. Perfect. Now if there is not any token, we will just say if there is no token, we will just say return. We will say redirect. We will say destination, and the destination should be the home route, so the user will be sent back to the login screen. Now we will have const verified, so we will check if the token is verified or not. So basically if the token is not tampered, we will check everything. So we'll say await JWT. We need to import JWT, so let's do that. Import JWT from JSON web token. Now here we will say jwt.verify. We will pass in the token here, and we also pass in the secret. So we say process.env.jwt secret. Perfect. And now if the token is not verified or someone tampered with the token, it will go back to the catch block. And yeah, I forgot, after the catch block we also need to redirect the user back, right? So we'll say return, we'll say redirect, we'll have destination, and the destination would be the home route. Perfect. Now we will have the contents of the JWT in this object if the token is verified. So now we will check with the database. So const object is equal to await user.find1, and now we are going to find using the ID right here, right? Because we had stored the ID of the user in the token. So ID should be verified.id. So if there is no user existing, so basically if there is no record found, then we will go back and just redirect back to the home screen. So let's just copy this, let's just paste this. Perfect. And if the user exists, we just pass in the props. So return props, we will pass in the email. We will say object.email, and we will also pass in the name. So we'll say name object.name. Perfect. Now let's work on the UI part. Now this should be pretty simple. Now we'll just go ahead and create a new div here. We won't be focusing on the actual styling, so we'll just create a div. We will say welcome. We need to get the props here first, so let's go ahead and do that. We have the name and email props which will be sent by the server. So yep, so now we will have welcome name. We will also print the email address here, div class name, no, not actually class name, div, and we will also have email here, and then we will have a button to log out. So let's do that. So button on click log out, which is a function we are yet to make, and now we'll call this button as logout. Now let's create the function. First of all, we need the next router to redirect the users, so we'll say const router is equal to use router, which Next.js provides us. Now we will use const logout. This should be a function which should do two things. First of all, remove the cookie, so we'll do remove cookies, and since we are on the client side now, we don't need to pass in the request and response, so we'll just say token. Now this should remove the token, and then we will do router dot replace to the home screen. Now this should redirect us back to the home screen. Now let's go ahead and run this thing. So npm run dev. I'll quickly open this. So localhost 3000, I'll bring in the screen. So there is an error right now. Get server side props didn't return anything. So let's see what's wrong. So it must be in index.js. So okay, so we are returning, if the cookie exists, we are returning something, but if the cookie does not exist, we are doing nothing. So let's do that. So return props, and we are passing in the empty props. Perfect. Now let's go back and reload. Now they should say login with Google. I'll click it. Let's go ahead and select the email ID. Something is wrong. Okay, so something is wrong with the callback URL. So let's go ahead and check API Google callback. Wait, connect. We haven't imported the passport file. See, we need to import the passport file in every file wherever you are using passport. That's the disadvantage of using passport and Next.js, but I wanted to make this simpler, so I just made this the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into lib, and now we are going to select passport. Save this. I'll go back. I'll reload. I'll click login with Google. I'll select the email ID, and it still doesn't want to work. Okay, in the callback we needed to pass in the request, response, and next, just as we did in here. We had passed this in. Now we are also passing this here. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and try again. I'll go to localhost 3000 again. So I'll click login with Google. I'll click on the email ID, and it says authentication failed. The other problem was here. So if we see here, we were doing tokens.push, and in the user.js we had a little typo and we had token here. So there should be tokens. So yeah, there are typos every here now and then. We'll just go ahead and reload this page. We will say login with Google. We will try again, and hopefully this works. Again, it's not working. So let's see what's the error now. Now it's again saying cannot read the properties of undefined. So let's go ahead and try to clear our database first. So if there is anything here, we can just try to restart from scratch. So I'll just clear this. I'll go back here. Now maybe it should work. Let's see. Again, it doesn't want to work. So cannot read properties of undefined. So tokens is a string, array of strings, and here it should be working, right? So new user.tokens.push. Simply restarting the server fixed it, I think, because it updated the models here. So basically if we restart the server, maybe it fixed it, that's why. Let's try again. Now it should pretty much work because there should be nothing else. Now let's see. Yep, now we see welcome Atha. Now we got my email here, and if we check the cookies here, we will also have a cookie here which says token, and we have our JWT stored here, so we can access the database whenever we want, and we can also log out, and if we see the token should be gone from here as well. Let's check. Yep, the value is emptied and it's basically not there now. So yeah, that was it for this video, guys. Yep, Passport is pretty much a lot trickier in Next.js. It's a nightmare to work with it in Next.js, but I think this video gave you a little insight on how to work with it if you are forced to work with it. And let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you any specific tutorial you want to see? You can always let me know in the comment section. And if you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to show me some support. And that was it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.